Welcome to the Mission Complete podcast. My name is Brian Robinson.
My name is Andy Hart.
And we are the co-owners of Mission Merch. We're a custom wholesale apparel company.
Why is that always so hard to say? Custom wholesale apparel company.
I don't know. It just is, but it's fine. We print t-shirts and do embroidery for businesses and churches and schools and artists on the road, on tour, kind of anybody. But we would love to work with you if you need merch.
Yes.
But we also, at the same time, have this fun podcast that we get to do where we get to interview people that either we work with or admire or would just want to share their story and tell their story. So today we have Andy Erwin, who founded Kingdom Story Company. And if you don't know who that is, you've probably seen some of the films that he has made. I Can Only Imagine, Jesus Revolution,
Unsung Hero.
Best
Christmas pageant ever.
Yeah.
Whitener.
So there's been a few.
Yeah.
You know,
There's
October Baby was his
October
first
Baby.
one.
Yep. There's more in the pipeline too, which is exciting. So you'll hear more about kind of how many are in the pipeline.
Yeah. So Andy Hart knows Andy Erwin through going to church together, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And we just asked him to sit down with us, and there were so many mic drop moments. This is a man who has been through so much, has been refined by the Lord, and is just dead to himself and alive to Christ, and the Lord using him to advance the kingdom through storytelling. And it was powerful to hear, how his life in Jesus is affecting what he does. What he does is not his identity.
Right.
What he does is out of who he actually is. So it was, man, I was walking away with a lot of nuggets that I'm chewing on right now still. So
You.
back of my in the back teeth, the molars. Me.
I will probably go back and listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah.
So
I think
it was that good.
Well, we hope that you enjoy this conversation, and here is our time with Andy Erwin.
Welcome to the Mission Complete podcast. My name is Andy Hart.
And I'm Brian Robinson.
And together we run Mission Merch, a custom wholesale apparel company. And our very special guest, Mr. Andrew Erwin from Kingdom Story Company. Welcome. We're super glad to have you. It's I'm just stoked.
So glad to be with you guys today. This is fun. We're already kind of like, we had like the pre-interview, and I think we wasted a lot of great material. It's awesome.
Yeah, we can circle back if we need
to. We'll just keep going. Keep going.
So one thing we do is, so part of our story of Mission Merch is we went through our branding workshop. So we went through a lot of our story from literally birth to, present day. And I talked for about 90 minutes. Brian talked for about 90 minutes, but we got to see God's hand over our lives. And then kind of the intersection of how we met and started working together and all of that stuff, which was really cool. And so we just saw like these big defining moments in our lives. And what would you say are some of your defining moments looking back? Like, how would you say God's hand has been over your life, specifically leading up to the film industry?
Yeah. Oh, man. It's one of those things where, like, I think if you, looking back reflective, you see it. Like, if you knew all of you were going to go through up front, all of us would be like, check, please, I'm out. Like, no, I'm not going to. Because it comes from, moments of providence. But in that moment, like, I think it's where you feel like you're drowning, that you kind of get the message the clearest.
Mm-hmm.
Couple of moments for us. So my brother and I, we, from Birmingham, Alabama, we kind of got started as kids in the industry as just like studio rats. And so my dad was in media, and, we just kind of like to tinker around with the equipment and figure out how to, it was a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I went up to a school in upstate New York, and
what's their accent like?
Yeah.
You said it earlier.
Yeah. So coming from Birmingham, like, I could talk Southern as the best. So I was like, hey, y'all, we have some corn, and like they talk like that.
Is that what everyone says?
No, that's exactly what they say. It's Alabama. And so when I moved up to New York, I was like, okay, walk the dog, and I came back, and I ended up with this weird blend, and then they accused me of being a Yankee, and it got weird. But when I moved up to, there was a school up in upstate New York, and little Christian college you never heard of, and
try us.
It's called Word of Life Bible Institute.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah,
no,
never has. So tiny little school, and they had a summer camp during the summers on this 90-acre island in the middle of one of these big lakes up in upstate New York, and they would have these kids that would come, 500 kids a week in this summer camp. And for all of us that, went to school there, we were all like camp counselors and stuff. And so they found out I had film experience, media experience. And they're like, hey, could you do film shorts for the kids? And I was like, yeah, sounds like fun. Let's do it. And so I called my brother, who's 15 at the time. I was like, hey, you want to come work for me? And so he came up for the summer, and we had a blast. We did like everything from Star Wars to like Westerns to whatever.
Awesome.
And but the moment that was defining is there's nothing more honest than a group of 500 high schoolers. And so the first one we did was like this Knights of the Round Table kind of King Arthur type deal. It ended at the end of it with like live pyrotechnics on the screen or on the stage. And like, you know, we were literally accepting the Oscar in our head. It's like, this is going to be amazing. It's gonna be epic. Yeah. It gets to the end of it and it's crickets. Oh, man. Nobody's talking. And then this one little snotty-nosed 12-year-old kid in the front row goes, is that it? And then everybody laughed. And so it's so scarred us for life that to this day, you know, we're always convinced that this guy's going to show up as a 45-year-old man. And is that it?
Oh, no.
But there was this motivation of like, let's figure out how to entertain a crowd. And so we had this test audience. And I didn't think God could ever use that. And there was like this mission conference they had up there. They had people that wanted to kind of commit to missions to kind of come forward. And I went forward and they're like, do you want to be a missionary? I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, well, why don't you come forward? And I was like, well, you know, to be a good, you know, follower of Christ, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do, I guess. And then the guy that I was talking to had a lot of wisdom. He's like, he laughed. He's like, if it's not what you want to do, what do you want to do? Like, what do you have in your hand? And I said, well, a camera. But I don't know how God could ever use that. It's just a camera. And he's like, give God what's in your hand and let him figure out how to use it. Oh my gosh. And so rather than committing to missions that night,
so simple. So simple.
Maybe a camera.
Wow.
And so, I would have never imagined that, you know, fast forward 20 something years later, more than that, close to 25 years later, that the films that we've been a part of had been, you know, they've been seen by millions of people around the world. And there's been, you know, hundreds of thousands of commitments to the Lord. And a movie like Jesus Revolution that we did, that my brother directed, I produced last year. Yeah. A movie like that, you know, has a big baptism element at Pirates Cove in California. Yeah. After the movie came out, they had 2 mass baptisms at Pirates Cove with churches that were kind of combining for the effort. And the first day they broke the record for the most baptisms in the history of the United States in one day. It was 4,500. And then at the end of the summer, they did the second one at 3,800. Dude. So seeing that so last Osh, things like that, I would have never imagined. We're just, you know, delinquent kids that, you know, like to hack equipment. So that's correct. Give that up. Yeah. So then you fast forward, you get your career, and there's moments where God reaffirmed that.
Yeah. So what was like one of the big first projects that you remember really starting to work on and like committing to?
Yeah, it was, we finally got people convinced to come down to Birmingham to let us do their music videos. Okay. And so we did from Nashville? Yeah, from Nashville. Okay. The first one was Michael W. Smith. And he had a tiny little 2-minute song that nobody was going to put on the radio, but he had done it for his daughter. And so it's called How to Say Goodbye. And so they reached out and said, we have no budget, but if you guys will put some home videos together, we just want to have fun with it. And we just said it'd be better for our resume and kind of building our brand. Yeah, totally. To do a real music video. So if we pay for the rest, can we do a big one? And they said, yeah. So John and I went and got a loan for $10,000 and we paid them to do their music. That's awesome. And that when was that? That was in 2008, 2009. Okay. And that was the moment that launched, you know, kind of us to music videos. And so that one was like a #1 video for like 6 months. They were popular. Wow. And so we did music videos for a long time. And we moved more into rock, and we did like videos for like Switchfoot and Skillet and Dirt Day. And our rock videos, we got really good at blowing things up. So if we couldn't, they started. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, always it'll be involved. It's a little bit like Danny McBride in Tropic Thunder. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah, and I think you need to know we've blown shirts up. That's what we have. Okay. We are. You know, it's, I would say more so me.
Yeah, it's a prime lead of every man to get back to their 14-year-old self. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, so
it was very entertaining.
So putting Tanner Wright on the work credit card was like one of the best days of my life. Dude, I'm not kidding. I like got a chill down my spine.
Dude, it's the best feeling. So we would, you know, like we if we couldn't figure out how to end a music video, we'd like get some blows up. And so I think the final
and cool guys don't look at
No.
I was literally.
That's fact. Exactly. And so the last video we did for Skillet, I think we kind of got lazy with our treatments by that point, but it's for the song called Hero. And I think the treatment read, the band comes out, things blow up, it starts to rain, more things blow up, it stops raining, everything blows up. The end. They're like, it's glorious. And so, that video's got like 500 million views on
The
YouTube.
recipe for success.
So, so we kind of did that for years until finally we was like, hey, is this film thing really something we want to chase? And
Beyond music videos.
Beyond music videos. Mm-hmm. And we were earning a paycheck at that point. We kind of been like, to make the jump. But the hard thing about it is like anytime you establish a brand in one vertical, to kind of jump to something that's similar but new, you have to kind of pay your dues all over again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so we were counting the costs and be like, do we really want to do this?
Yeah.
And the Kendrick brothers that do like Fireproof and movies like that, they were doing a movie called Courageous in Atlanta. And they asked my brother, because had done some action stuff, to kind of do some of the second unit action, like police chase stuff.
Okay.
And so John was on set and Alex Kendrick said, what's the purpose of what you're here for? And he said, John was like, I'm here for a paycheck. And he said, no, it's time for you and your brother to get off the sidelines and find their stories to tell. So he came home and had this little tiny script with a no budget called October Baby. And that was going to be our first. So that was in 2009. And we did that, made enough money to make the next movie. That I wanted money to make the next movie. And then we really found our voice. The big moment was out of a failure. We'd done a movie called Woodlawn. And Woodlawn, to this day, is one of the things I'm most proud of. But we got way ahead of ourselves. We'd spent way too much money. We had way too much ego. And we made this story that was personal. It was a true story that happened in Alabama that my dad used to tell us as a bedtime story. And we made the movie, and the product turned out great, but we didn't know how to market it. And it wasn't, the intellectual property wasn't strong enough to launch it. And it was a financial failure.
Oh, man.
And we got to the end of that, and we had found our voice of the kind of stories we wanted to tell. Sure. The power of a true story. But we were like, man, this may be a career ender. And God did that, allowed that, and really humbled us. And so we went once more around the block, and that's when I ran into Bart Millard and found out the story of I Can Only Imagine, and that had been developed. And so we went and raised the money to do it independently. We wrote the role of the father in that movie for Mel Gibson. Mel ended up not being able to do it, not being available. And so I was on set filming the first day. We didn't have any stars in the cast to play the dad. Yeah. Dennis Quaid hadn't signed on yet. Yeah. And he just had a panic attack that first day. And
like a legit panic attack.
Legit, like elephant on your chest, feel like golly. And I mean, it was quiet. Like people didn't know that was going on with me, but like this back in read.
Sure.
And I went back to my apartment in Oklahoma City where we were filming it. And I just kind of got quiet with God. And it's like, God, I'm either making the best movie ever or the worst. And I don't know which one it is. And God just kind of in a still small voice says, is that okay? I'm like, no, it's not okay. I don't want to be embarrassed. And just that question, is that okay? And finally I came to the point, it was like, okay, God, if it's a failure, it's yours. So what do you want to do with this? And there's this powerful moment that happens that so much of when we look stupid in life is when we're just making decisions out of self-protection. We're afraid of looking stupid. So you look stupid.
Yeah.
And there's something about clinging to the life raft, being afraid of drowning, that kind of keeps you always from achieving what you need to do. And there's this moment that comes that is powerful, that when you're willing to let go of the boat and like accept your fate and be like, if I drown, I drown, but I'm swimming for shore. And there's no guarantees that I make it, but I'm not going to hold back. And so I swam, just accepting my fate as a dead man, that, hey, this isn't going to work. And then that little film came out. They were only predicting me to do $2 million opening weekend, which was a disaster. And it came out, and this tiny little film did $17 million opening weekend. It did another 14 the next, then ended up doing $86 million total for this little tiny thing. And I remember what happened, what replaced the ego of validation. Yeah. Is I was sitting at this little tiny food court in a mall in Plano, Texas. And the movie was playing next door and just blowing everybody away. The band was making an appearance. I'm sitting at the food court. The people are walking by me and they have no clue who I am. Yeah. I have no clue that I'm a part of this movie. Sure. And I had tears in my eyes, and I just was like, what replaced the ego was gratitude. Yeah. It was like, how cool to be part of a moment, seeing God move, that I just get to have a front row seat and watch. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
there's this powerful moment is when you divorce your identity from what you do. It allows you to do what you do with purpose.
So you could say that again.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's the thought, that idea of just of identity.
You were already dead to it.
Yeah.
Like you had to die first.
Yep.
And then the Lord was like, now I can do something with it.
Absolutely.
Because we're not going to boast. He's not going to allow us to boast.
Yeah.
We have nothing to boast in.
That's right.
But he's not going to allow us to receive that glory.
Yeah.
It's his.
Well, and it's like, because I don't think, and it's for our good too, because if he gives us what we'll think we want before we're ready for it,
Yes,
it destroys us. And I've seen it happen to a lot of friends that have had moments of success that had not gotten to a moment where they fully bent the knee yet.
Yeah.
And I watched it consume them and destroy them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the ring from Lord of the Rings is fame and glory isn't something we're meant to hold on to.
Yeah.
It's something we're meant to reflect, but it's not something we're meant to own. And it's something that really only God can handle.
Yeah.
And there's certain of us that are more resistant than others, like Frodo was in Lord of the Rings, but it affects all of us.
Yeah.
But when you grasp it and hold on to it, and even if you say, I'm going to use it for good, next thing you know, you look like Gollum and you're, petting this ring in the corner and being like, my precious, like it really just consumes you. So I think what God allows is enough trials to carve out the identity. And you can either fight it and resist it or submit to it. But when you submit to it, there's this powerful moment of that being like, okay, I can entrust you with more.
Yeah. So what do you feel like that looks like in your industry? Because there is a platform. There's you've got all these actors that their goal is to be watched, is to be seen.
Yeah.
How do you walk that out?
Too.
Yeah, like within your business. I don't know. How do you keep that balance, even for the entire team that you're working with? And obviously, you can't do that for everybody. But I don't know. What does that look like for you?
The challenge is it's a clever kind of evolving parasite that you have to always deal with. It nags at you, and you have to be proactive in having people that speak truth into life. I think isolation kills you in this business. When you feel like, because what a lot of times you have one or two paths. You have a path where you feel like out of insecurity, you're trying to prove yourself, chip on your shoulder. And if your identity is in that, finally you get to a point where that tipping point hits and you have success.
Yeah.
And if you have not carved out that identity issue and the ego and that insecurity, then what you inevitably do is you insulate yourselves with yes people that will tell you exactly what you want to hear over and over and over again. Like, you're great, you're wonderful, everybody loves you, da, 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 da. And then you become the worst version of yourself. Mm-hmm. The other option is to go into it with some brokenness and some humility of understanding your flaws and your struggles. And then being able to, after a moment of success, being like, I need people that are going to speak truth in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really, it's an intentionality.
Yeah. I feel like that's a human issue. It's not just in your industry, obviously. Sure. Like if you're a pastor and you find a little success and then you want to insulate yourself so that you keep that feeling of success, you're going to surround yourself with yes men and women. And I feel like, you end up usurping the power of God, but it's interesting to hear the kingdom principles apply wherever you are. Oh, you know what I mean? That's basically what I hear you saying.
They do. I mean, human nature is human nature.
Yeah.
I think the thing with the entertainment industry that makes it a little bit more toxic is the visibility and the hero worship.
Yeah.
Because it takes it to another level. Like, I think it's why Los Angeles is in such a broken town.
Mm-hmm.
Is there's a spiritual element to it of it's the pinnacle of humanism where people are put on a platform and absolutely worshipped, and it drives people absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And so, and so whether people have had that success or you look at the street corner with the guy talking to himself, that he's got, some drug issues or mental health issues. And you see that fame corrupts on both ends of the spectrum of either people that didn't have their moment.
Yeah.
Or
I know I heard it.
Turn off.
I think we're not fully doing a video the entire time.
So I think
we'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
So
great. So I think that, and what I've talked to other people that have had moments of success. I think it's about mentality too. Is the mentality is I told one kid that is a well-known actor, has tens of millions of followers on socials.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, you haven't been cursed with fame, you've been gifted with influence.
That's so good.
And so if you see that,
True influence,
that it's not about ownership, it's about stewardship. And so if I've been given whatever level of success, it's there for to be in purpose. And like, there's certain people that handle that well, like Chris Pratt, absolutely legit.
Yep.
Like every
That's
time
awesome.
I've been around Chris, he knows the game. He knows like I'm going to have a shelf life of being the it guy and a leading man.
Sure.
And there's going to be a moment where that moment passes, and I'm going to be able to just however long I have it, try to use it on purpose.
Yeah.
And so, people that get it, I think God trusts them with more.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't consume them as much. But all of us, no matter how much your mentality is correct, it will seep into your skin, and you will begin to battle that idea of entitlement, ego. That's when you have to have people around you that as men, men and women, that you intentionally have a vulnerability. If I think with men, sometimes we struggle with that insecurity, ego, you forget more.
Yeah.
And it can get toxic. I think that you have to be intentional about surrounding yourself with people that love you, that know you inside and out, that there's no two people, there's one person that they know. And that you intentionally invite in to asking you the tough questions.
I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. So how many of those people do you have, and like who are they? What roles are they in your life?
Yeah, there's that's a great question. I would say that vulnerability is something that I aspire to, I fight for, just because I do, like anybody else, veer towards wanting to hide the things that aren't pretty.
Oh yeah.
That, which goes back to that insecurity ego thing. I don't think everybody's trustworthy to know all of your stuff.
Right. Of course.
But I'm vulnerable about my mistakes. I'm a flawed individual. Like I'll share with anybody that I feel like it'll help, or anybody that I think that is safe to speak into it. But but there's other people that like know me inside and out. Like there's zero mystery to it,
Yeah.
And for me, I've got, probably an inner circle of about 10 to 15 of those people, those guys. One of them is a guy that speaks at our church a lot, is Jeff Schulte. He has a ministry called 10 Million, like the 10 Million from Wizard of Oz to LLC. Their ministries are just about giving guys their heart back.
So yeah, that's awesome.
And so I've been meeting with Jeff for about 5 or 6 years, and meeting twice a week. There's a group of men who meet on Wednesday mornings, and I meet with a person that was a week sin, and he's just been a godsend for me. There is a group of probably 6 or 7 just friends that that we'll get together at a fire pit once every couple of weeks and share life. So good, and there's no mystery to it.
Yeah.
And then I've walked in recovery for years, but I really dialed up my recovery journey over the past few years. There's four or 5 guys within that know every flaw about me and make sure that that this seductive industry doesn't suck me under. And so, one of those guys, I was on the phone with driving here, and so I think it takes a level of intentionality. You don't find relationship like that by accident. That's on purpose. You have to seek it out. And vulnerable people seek out vulnerable people. And I think what gets you to a place of vulnerability is finally getting to a place where you've got enough failures.
Yep.
And everybody has a rock bottom.
Yep.
And, one of the most loving things you can do is don't deny a person their rock bottom.
Yep.
But when you finally get to a point where, like,
you could say that again, that is good.
Yeah. It's like, it's because a lot of times we want to rescue people.
Yes. Yeah.
But the idea, it's codependency, but allowing people to hit their rock bottom and not save them out of it gives them the desperation to say, I need change in my life. And that's really what, has been my journey of understanding, like, I'm a broken, flawed person and I need people that tell me.
Yeah.
And so, whether it's in the industry or at home, but there's one person.
Yeah.
And I have to fight every day to make sure that that's the case. And I'm grateful for trustworthy people that have spoken into that journey and have allowed me to grow.
Yeah. And I feel like you've seen the effects of both the being vulnerable and the effects when you are not, like how toxic that ends up becoming, especially I would imagine in your industry. Because I think, thinking about people that are motivated by, I desire, God made me to perform. God made me to tell stories. Like there is a motivation behind that, which is powerful.
Right.
But what's your why? Like what is your, or is this like you said, ownership or stewardship?
Yeah.
So like, I guess my question with that would be, how do you balance the excellence piece of it? Where it's like, it's not who I am, but what I do is going to be the best that I can do without that sucking you into.
Well, I think,
you know,
I think they're not diametrically opposed. They're actually in harmonization, because I think as long as it is coming out of an insecurity that you need to perform, you're filling up a deficit.
Right.
And so you're not starting at ground zero.
Right.
There's a hole there that no matter how much success you pump into it, you're never going to feel it. Because if you're not receiving it, it's just like, I need more, I need more, I need more. And that's the case with anything, whether it's any kind of addiction or performance or money, there's not enough to fill that hole. So unless you carve that piece out and be like, we got to deal with who I am on its own plane, you're always going to be compensating, which is not going to be quality. It's going to be indulgent. And so, because you're doing it for you, you're not doing it for a purpose. And so I think the work a lot of times is affected by that, because it's filled with insecurity, and nobody does their best performing when they're insecure.
That's right.
But when you recognize that insecurity and you take that and you find that identity in God and people that really know you, and you find out, who am I if you carve all the rest of it out? And I think as men, we struggle so much with that idea of identity, because I think, one of the first, things that Adam did is, after he and Eve had sinned, he threw his wife under the bus, because he was trying to look competent. It's like, it's her fault. And instead of being man, then standing up and saying, you know what, I suck as a leader and I made a bad decision. He just like, it's her fault.
Passivity.
And so there was this idea of, I don't want to look bad. And I think that is ingrained a lot of times in our fallen nature as men. And so when you can kind of to put that to the side and being like, stop worrying about what people think of you, and really be your true identity of like, who does God say that I am? And who am I when you strip all this out? And then the other thing is, I think identity words are very impactful, because the first thing God said about us, or the way he identified himself, is I am. So I am statements, I think, are divine statements. So when you figure out who you are in Christ, it allows you to say who you truly are. And then when you have that carved out, it gives you like a level playing field of like, then let's go make it great.
Right.
Let's go fight for awesomeness.
It's good.
Let's make it memorable and swing for the fence, because I got nothing to lose in playing with house money. And so we say quality is something we always chase. It's not something we ever catch. We just try to get skilled better each time.
That's good.
And so, it was cool. Like this year we really worked at facilitating other people's stories. And so I took a step back from being the director, and I focused with my partner, Kevin Downs, on producing more and finding other worthy storytellers and pushing them out. So whether that was John Gunn with Ordinary Angels this year, or the For King Country guys with Joel and Luke, with Unsung Hero, or with Dallas Jenkins with Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It became about, trying to push other worthy storytellers to the front.
Sure.
So we're at the Dove Awards, which is kind of a Christian award show that happens in, a couple months ago. And Unsung Hero was up for the film of the year against like Sound of Freedom and some really big news.
Wow.
And Unsung Hero won. And so we got up on stage, and I was in the background, and, got a chance to push Joel and his family out front. Joel had this amazing moment with his father. That was such a cool fly on the wall experience. But I sat down with my wife afterwards, and I said, this one felt better than anything you've ever done, because I've never been so content to be at the back of a platform. Like, I don't need it. I don't need it. And so I'm not chasing the accolades. I'm just chasing the fact that I get to tell stories for a living. What a privilege. And I want to do the best I can for the audience, because they deserve that. And so it's taking that deficit out of the equation. I think that's when you only start to tap into what real quality do.
When you can put your hand on someone's back, you be like, no, you this is your moment.
I mean, it's the Ronald Reagan quote of, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea.
I love that. I love that. So it's so counter.
Yeah,
that
very much.
industry. So counter.
It's not intuitive at all.
No.
Because it's our fallen nature. Our fallen nature wants control. We want to know what we're missing out on.
Yep.
And we want to compensate when we make mistakes.
Yep.
And we want to kind of, shift the blame or look competent. And that's our fallen nature.
Yeah.
But our nature in Christ has the ability to find completion.
Mm.
When we find completion, I think there's moments we can tap into original intent. And God's original intent was that he would satisfy all.
He's right.
So,
It's literally extending the kingdom.
Yeah.
That's
awesome. Yeah. So let's pivot a little bit. You brought up Unsung Hero, Best Christmas Pageant Ever. So you're just kind of like fresh out of that season.
Big year.
Yeah. So a lot happening. What did you experience? What did you learn with the releases of these movies?
Yeah, it was cool.
Whitebird.
Yeah, Whitebird is another one. Yeah, Whitebird was another one we released. Yeah, the most films that we've done released in a year is 2 before this. And so this year we get 4.
Yeah.
And the idea of Kingdom was founded on this dream of what, the chairman of our board, Tony Young, was the guy that came up with the idea. It's like, what can we do together that none of us can do separately? And, I think in Christian arts, Christianity as a whole, but Christian art in particular, is very tribal. And
totally.
And it's like the idea, I think it's that poverty mindset.
Yeah.
That because we had atrophy for so many years, for 3 or 4 decades where we kind of avoided certain art forms because we were told that that's not what Christians do.
Right.
There became this poverty mindset of, fighting for resources and being like, I need to hold on to everything I have to be able to make it, which allowed us some modicum of relevance, but it also kept us small. And so we would have moments of breakout, but it was not sustainable.
Sure.
So the idea was, how do we break down those walls and how do we check our egos at the door and work together? And so Kingdom became a platform that we had the desire to not just tell our stories, but to find worthy storytellers that we could kind of collaborate with. And is this best idea wins policy that we all support each other. And we'd all done that, started to do that privately behind the scenes. But there was a group of us that all started in proximity that found our lanes, like the Kendrick brothers that did, War Room and Fireproof and all that.
Yeah.
You had my brother and I and Kevin Downs with our films. We had like Devon Franklin with like the Heaven is Real and Miracles from Heaven on those kind of films. You had Dallas Jenkins that were doing the Chosen. You had Alejandro Marberde that did a little tiny film called Bella that was amazing, and then all they do sounded for you.
Mm.
And then you had some other ones like John Gunn, Corporal, and others. We all started in proximity with this idea of how do we do stories of faith.
Yeah.
But it was very tribal. But then they came this unified moment of like, but what if we did it something together?
Mm.
This was the first year that idea became a reality.
And it doubled what you've been doing.
Yeah.
It's great.
And the output was amazing. And these films found their audience. The crazy thing is all 4 films that were released this year, like, because we were always like the butt of the joke for years. I mean, there was a lot of Christian cheese when we first started, and I was part of the cheese. So like, there's no stones to throw. But in that, we started to find quality along the way.
Mm.
So this year, to have 4 films that were released, all 4 films are fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with the critics.
Mm.
Best Christmas Pageant Ever that Dallas did is out right now, and it's at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes with critics, which is including like the New York Times gave it a favorable review, which never happens.
Wow, dude.
The audience is served well. All of those films are between 97 and 90% certified with the audience.
Wow.
3 of the films are A+ cinema scores. And all 4 films absolutely have the personality of the filmmaker, but they fit within the Redemption brand.
Mm.
And when we started, the sandbox for faith film was very small. It was had a color in the line that was very much, that's what the expected experience was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people tried to rail against that, would try to jump this chasm to mainstream, and they would die in chasm.
Mm.
But what we've slowly done is just expanded the walls of the sandbox. So now the sandbox went from this to like something that's sizable.
Yeah.
And there's room for variety.
Yeah.
So each of those 4 films has a very distinct personality. Each of those films is successful in their own right.
Right.
And, but they all fit within the Redemption brand that we try to establish. That's what Kingdom is founded on. And this was the first year that vision became bigger than somebody than Durward.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
So do you see that being the trajectory of where this
Well, this,
niche?
selfishly, the platform allows it now where I get to be one of the creatives at the table.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to be selfless for everything the rest of my life. I've got stories that I want to tell, but
Yeah.
but I get to be one of the artists in the queue,
Yeah.
and I also have access to the same way we pour into their stories. They're there to pour into my story.
Yeah.
So we kind of set each other up. It's a little bit of a King Arthur thing of like the round table. There's no head of the table.
Going back to your first
Yeah.
video
Back
that
to
we
King
made.
Arthur. Hopefully you do it better next time.
Yeah.
If that kid's listening. But that idea is this sound where it's like we serve each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got stories to tell. We're about to go into production on a movie that the press release will announce soon that will be a sequel to something awesome, but I can't say what it is yet. But that'll announce really soon.
Cool.
That we're going to be directing. That I'm going to be directing with my buddy Brent McCorkle after the first of the year. That's going to be awesome. And then I've got my Navy SEAL movie that we're working on.
Yes.
That Fearless has been something I chased for 5-6 years now, and Jason Hall that wrote American Sniper wrote the script, and it's the best redemption story I've ever read. It's a very masculine story.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story, and that one's going to be amazing. It's going to be a big budget film.
Yeah.
It's exciting that Lionsgate has really allowed us to tell our stories and given us a platform, and they believed in the faith audience and allowed us to branch out beyond the church walls to try to reach like benevolent skeptics outside the doors. So it's been really cool.
So stories make people feel. What do you like? What things are in your heart that you want people to feel down the road? Not to like give away, like show your hand or anything, but what do you want people to feel with some of these other dreams that are in your heart?
For us, the idea that we try to capture is redemption in its simplest form. And so to kind of have something where it's a vicarious emotional journey, like you said, and our desire is to, help the church feel seen and represented well, but then ultimately reach the what we call benevolent skeptics, the people that are just outside the church walls and they're kind of open and curious. And so we try to find them, and the destination for all of our films that we try to land on is the idea of redemption that results in a rush of hope. People crave hope right now. And for sure, it's become so hopeless in society, especially over the past 10 years, that what used to be labeled as cheesy, all of a sudden has kind of gotten to this moment that's counterculture.
Yeah.
It's rebellious.
Yeah.
The idea of being hopeful is like, that's against the grain.
How dare you?
And so how dare you? And so I think the audience craves it. So when you see a little tiny movie like Christmas Pageant doing what it's doing and competing with all these huge films, our budget was $10 million and the budget for, Gladiator 2 was $250 million. So it's like, the marketing budget alone for the Wicked movie is like $300 million. So like, sheesh. So we're competing at a fraction of the budget and it's holding its own. And so like, I think people want to feel something uplifting, and there's nothing wrong with those other films. They're great films, but it's just, we can compete. And I think for us, that idea of hope and leading people with that experience, but there's room for variety now. So we've got a thriller being developed right now on based on a best-selling novel that people have chased for years, and so I'm thrilled about that one. Excited, and we've got several other true stories that we're telling that are amazing, and we're going back to some of the brands that we've loved along the way to tell more of the story. So there are developments happening, but we've got it's funny. We went into Lionsgate we just renewed with them for another 3 years. And it's been a great relationship. Love my bosses there. They're just great collaborators, and they give us creative control. So we get to tell our stories our way, which is awesome. There's no agenda being shoved into it. It's just telling the story. Powerful, yeah. But when we walked into pitch the other day, the pitch our slate, we walked in with 10 films and kind of pitched why each of these pieces of intellectual property was worth investing in while we forward. They were ones we knew to our audience for. We usually go in there and for a pitch, we expect maybe the 20 to 30%, green light. Like if they'll green light developing 3 out of 10. Sure. That's a good day. Yeah. So we got to the end of it, and my boss, Adam, at Lionsgate things, and he said, so we're going to do all 10 of these. And he said, let me tell you why. And he walked me through why each of them were like smart choices. Like to have a company like Skate that is no way leaving in it. Like right now it's just like, how do we, it's a little bit like the disciples pulling the fish into the boat. It's like, how do we not sink the boat? How do we do this?
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time. I don't know how long that window lasts.
Sure.
That could last a couple of years. It could last 20 years. I don't know.
Yeah. Sure.
But for as long as that window is there, we're gonna make hay, and we're gonna try to make an impact for each other.
I love it, dude. I saw, there was a worship night at a church. This was back, I guess, in the summer, was it? There's a church here in town. I got saved at that church, by the way.
Cool.
But I just saw you, and I saw you talking about we need kingdom people, and pun intended. We need kingdom people in this industry, and you're talking about just your heart for it.
Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about why you feel like just so drawn to this? Number one, and maybe number two, kind of what you've seen and what you want to continue to see. I know you talked about you're seeing people get baptized, and that's dude, that is huge.
Yeah.
I just want to hear more about your heart behind it.
Yeah. It's cool. I've got a couple different passions there. One of the things that it was really helpful for me with Jeff Schulte is he helped me understand the difference between anger and rage. And rage is about fear. It's about fear of losing something.
Yep.
When you lose control, you just lash out. But it's rage. It's fear. But anger is about passion.
That's right.
Anger is about what you want. It's like, I want something. I have enough anger to push past my fear. And anger can be an incredibly healthy thing. That's why the Bible says, be angry and sin not. No need to cross over into rage, but I think there's a healthy version of anger. It's the same thing that Jesus displayed when he drove out the moneylenders in the temple. And I think so I've got a healthy anger, I think, that God's cultivated for what could be. And I think it drives our decision making. I think what I talked about that night at church, that was a great night. I was honored to be invited to that prayer meeting. The idea, you look at the history of the church, and Christianity led the arts for hundreds of years. You look at the Renaissance, and every great chapel or work of art, a painting or statue that came out of that has shown biblical history. Yeah. You go across Europe and you can't look at one cathedral that just doesn't have the beauty and the storytelling kind of illustrating what we believe. You look at the printing press. When that was invented, the first thing that was printed on the printing press was the Gutenberg Bible.
That's right,
to give the scripture back to the people.
Yeah, right.
And you look at radio and the evangelists that have used that for years, and television, how Billy Graham used that for years. And then you look at film, and film for a long time was that place. Both Christianity and Judaism and Catholicism, they all kind of controlled filmmaking, up through the 60s, are very involved. You look at even the MPAA that rates movies was controlled by the Catholic Church for years. It was called the Legion of Decency, was what it was called.
Wow.
And so
don't have that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at the amazing films, whether it's Cecil B. DeMille's kind of the Bible, or you look at Ben-Hur, written Waller's Ben-Hur. There's 3 or 4 different versions of Ben-Hur, 3 of those count. But you look at the Ten Commandments, the robe, all these stories that were amazing storytelling that pointed towards faith. Yeah. And somewhere in I think it was 1968, the Catholic Church let go of the EKA and turned it over to a secular organization. And then when that happened, the content kind of began to change, and the church was like, you know what, the movie theater is evil.
Yeah.
Part of that, right? It pulled out.
Right.
And so for about 3 or 4 decades, we acted.
Wow.
And it wasn't till The Passion of Christ came along in 2004, Mel Gibson, and that was 36 years later.
Yeah.
That Mel told that story as a master storyteller.
Yeah.
And a bunch of us as Christians and churches and everybody were like, oh, we need to be involved in that. But none of us knew how to start.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't know where to go.
Right.
And so we had to learn the art of storytelling. And storytelling originated from the heart of God.
Yeah.
You look at the master storytelling of the Bible.
Yeah.
And then you look at Jesus as a storyteller. And Jesus was a master storyteller.
Yeah.
He would tell these parables that would engage people's hearts.
Yeah.
He wouldn't answer all the questions. He would just engage with them emotionally.
Yeah.
And it was emotional jamming. If I could jam a wedge between your heart and your head, and have a story make you feel something,
Right.
then it will begin to kind of reverse engineer your mind to begin to challenge your thinking. And that's when Jesus would tell these parables. He would leave it open-ended, and then people would come back to him, the disciples or other followers, and be like, what did that mean?
Yeah.
And then he like, well, the rest of the story. And so, I think for us to see the hard-fought years since 2004, the 20 years that have passed, there's finally a group of individuals that have learned the discipline of really good storytelling. And we're finding our seat back at the table.
Yeah.
Now it goes back to stewardship or ownership. Like it's that share of something we're entitled to that we own, then we're going to waste it. But if it's about stewardship, that for whatever time God has allowed us to have our seat back at the table, if we use that intentionally, this thing could get special. And so that's my anger. Yeah. And then, on the other side is because it is such a corrupt system, there are, individuals that are all on a journey that have been really hurt by it. And so we look on a personal way of like, how do we connect with people on a journey and influence them towards the kingdom? So like doing I Can Only Imagine, Dennis Quaid has talked about it. Like we had amazing conversations about God and about Christ, as we were releasing that movie. And Dennis Quaid has talked about that since then, he's really come back fully to his Christian faith. And he's like, I have a relationship with Jesus now. He's like, it's raw, it's rough, it's a John Cash, but I have that. And I think that we got to play maybe a small part in that.
Yeah, sure.
Or this kid, I met him the other day, amazing kid named Joshua Bassett. And he is really popular right now with his music, but he was a Disney Channel kid. And wild kid. I think he dated like Olivia Rodrigo and people like that.
Sure.
But then he had a health crisis. He used to mock God. Like on radio shows, all sorts of stuff, he mocked God. And he had a health crisis where it was pretty intense. And he almost died. And in that, he came to find Jesus.
Wow.
And he's out talking on radio now, been like, I was one that mocked God, and now I found a relationship with Jesus, and I know what that means, other than the fact that he's real. And so, I've met with him a couple of times. I was on the phone with him yesterday. We try to encourage people on their journey.
So
that is that as they find their voice, give them the safe place that they can feel it.
Yeah. So young.
Dang, dude. That's crazy. Well, yeah, I love hearing the why, because I saw that night and I was like, I have to reach out to him. I have to ask him. Like, just to see the raw and the rawness and the passion, such that is, yeah.
It means flattery. I appreciate that. It's I think God's gifted different people in different lanes. But when you find an inner anger to be like, part of my job is a holy job to bring home a paycheck to my family.
Sure. Yeah.
Part of it is to feed my bank account. And that's a great calling.
Yeah.
But there's a double bottom line of like, what part of this feeds my soul? And how do I find purpose that whether I'm a plumber or a chef or a musician or a pastor or a storyteller, like whatever God's put in my heart, where do I find an inner anger that goes beyond just my wallet and has an internal perspective of using it for as long as God gives me the stewardship of that to use it on purpose.
Sure.
And then when you tap into your why, that's when it gets truly special.
Yep.
And so that's our why, and each person has to find them.
Yeah. And so, wow, man. Well, I'm so grateful that you came. You're so grateful that you would spend time with us. Yeah. There's been a lot of like mic drop moments.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow, like use what God has put in your hand. It was like a big one. So we want to give you something, just a small gift, just to like, hopefully you can look back and be like, oh, that was a great conversation. But you have your choice between a Coyote Brown or a charcoal, 100% US made full grain leather.
I like the brown.
I mean,
nice.
It's usually a crop favorite.
That's nice.
So we just want you to.
Hats are my love language.
Well, very cool.
So I will accept this gift.
Yes.
It perfectly.
Receive it. Yeah. There you go. It looks good.
There you go.
Yeah, I adjusted it perfectly before you came here.
There you go. There you go.
Pre-measured.
Got science to it.
Yeah.
That's why at church I felt somebody putting their hands around my head the other day. It's like you're measuring. You're measuring for that. So it's like wait. Hey. That's like
that's weird.
That's a weird height.
But it worked out.
Yep. So here we are. Yep. But dude, thank you. We care about you. What you're doing is very important.
Yeah.
And God really cares about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's very important for the kingdom.
I appreciate you guys drawing attention to stories like ours and for the intentionality of conversations you're wanting to have. And
Yeah.
I was honored to be on this with you. So thanks.
Yes, man. We just pray blessing over you guys as these 10 films are kind of come out, these 10 new ideas, just needing a fresh pouring out of the Spirit. And we'll just pray that over you guys as you do that, and that you'll have the right people. You know, you're going to need a bigger team. I feel like, you know,
Jaws, they were going to need a bigger boat. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's got you, but we'll be praying into that. So, yeah. Yeah. All right.
And boom.